After Zoe held the wishing stones and said her wish, her body transformed, her buttocks and breast became bigger and rounder. When she walked the street, everyone, man and woman, young and old, stopped to admire her body. In the quiet village of Enkay, which sat by a glistening river, there lived a humble fisherman named Numo and his lively wife, Zoe. They lived in a modest hut with a thatched roof, and though they didn't have much, Zoe often dreamed of a life filled with luxury, while Numo was content with their simple life. One sunny morning, Numo set out on his usual fishing trip. The river, which had provided for their needs for years, seemed strangely still that day. After hours of waiting, Numo's net caught something heavy. Straining, he pulled the net ashore, expecting a large fish, but instead, he found 3 smooth, glowing stones. They shimmered with colors he had never seen before, lighting up the riverbank. "These stones are no ordinary stones," Numo muttered to himself. He wrapped them in his fishing net and hurried home to show Zoe. When he arrived, Zoe was weaving a colorful mat under the shade of a mango tree. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity when she saw Numo rushing toward her with an excited expression. "What have you found, my husband?" Zoe asked, standing up and dusting off her skirt. Numo held up the stones. "Look at this. I pulled them from the river today. They're unlike anything I've ever seen. I think they're magical." Zoe's eyes widened as she reached for one of the stones. Just as her fingers touched its smooth surface, a shimmering spirit appeared before them. It was tall and translucent, its voice echoing as it spoke. "You have discovered the wishing stones," the spirit said. "Each stone grants one wish. But beware, your wishes will shape your fate. Use them wisely." Zoe and Numo were stunned. They had heard of such magical things in old tales but never thought they would encounter such power in real life. Zoe, always quick to act, barely gave it a thought before speaking. She held the first stone tightly in her hand and said, "I wish to have the biggest and roundest buttocks in the entire village." Numo's mouth dropped open. "Zoe, is that really what you want?" he asked in disbelief, but it was too late. The stone glowed brightly, then crumbled into dust. In an instant, Zoe's hips began to expand, her buttocks growing rounder and rounder. Soon, they were enormousness, giving her the shape she had always wanted. At first, Zoe was ecstatic. She had always admired the women in the village who were praised for their large, shapely figures. Now she was the one everyone would talk about. "Look at me, Numo!" Zoe cried with glee, trying to turn and show off her new shape. "The whole village will be in awe of me now." Numo, however, wasn't so sure. "But Zoe, is this what you really want? To be the center of attraction?" he asked. Zoe waved him off. "Nonsense, Numo. I don't need to weave or do heavy work anymore. With a figure like this, I'll be admired by everyone." Sure enough, when Zoe walked through the village, heads turned, and whispers followed her wherever she went. Her new figure caused a stir, and people couldn't stop talking about it. At first, Zoe loved the attention. She strutted through the marketplace, enjoying the looks and comments from the villagers. Women eyed her with envy, while men gave her approving glances. But after a while, the novelty began to wear off. Zoe's enormous buttocks were becoming more of a burden than a blessing. She could no longer go anywhere unnoticed. People no longer took her seriously. Everyone simply fixated on her buttocks. It was as if her whole life had been reduced to her buttocks. No one talked about the basket she weaved or about her other skills such as cooking. It was always about her physical looks. One evening, As she reflected deeply about her life, with tears in the corner of her eyes, she sighed heavily. Maybe this wasn't the best wish, she admitted. Numo, who had been patiently waiting for her to realize this, nodded. It's not too late to make things right, Zay. We still have 2 stones left. But Zay, still reluctant to admit defeat, brushed off his suggestion. What we need is wealth, Numo. If we were rich, none of these small inconveniences would matter. Ignoring Numo's protest, Zay grabbed the second stone. I wish for us to be the richest family in the land. The stone glowed, just like the first, and then turned to dust. That very night, their small, humble hut transformed into a grand mansion. It had high ceilings, marble floors, and golden decorations. The once simple home was now filled with treasures, jewels, gold coins, and fine silk. Servants appeared, ready to cater to their every need. Zay was overjoyed. She now had everything she had ever dreamed of. Look at this, Numo, she exclaimed, running through the grand halls of their mansion. We have wealth beyond our wildest dreams. But Numo wasn't as pleased. The wealth made their lives easier in some ways, but it also distanced them from the other villagers. People no longer came to visit. The villagers whispered about their sudden fortune and grew envious. Zay, who had always been friendly, became demanding and greedy. She ordered the servants around and grew obsessed with her riches, counting her gold coins late into the night. Despite all their wealth, Zay still wasn't satisfied. Numo, she said one day, we should rule over the entire village. With wealth and power, no one would dare to question us. Numo, who had grown weary of Zay's ambitions, tried to reason with her. We've lost ourselves, Zay. Look around. We've become isolated. Our wealth has brought us nothing but loneliness and resentment. But Zay wouldn't listen. She grabbed the final stone and, with a glint of determination in her eye, made her last wish. I wish for us to be the rulers of this village, with everyone bowing to us. The final stone glowed and crumbled. In a blink, Numo and Zay found themselves sitting on golden thrones in a grand hall, crowned as the rulers of the village. But with power came fear. The villagers no longer spoke to them or looked them in the eye. Zay's demands grew harsher, and soon, the villagers began to avoid them entirely. Numo, now heartbroken, could see that their wishes had brought nothing but sorrow. One night, as they slept in their grand mansion, Numo walked to the riverbank where he had first found the stones. He knelt beside the water, his heart heavy with regret. I wish for peace, he whispered. I wish for us to return to the simple life we had before, free from greed and vanity. As soon as the words left his lips, the grand mansion disappeared, and Numo found himself back in their simple hut. Zay's oversized buttocks returned to their normal size, and the wealth and power were gone. But to Numo's relief, Zoe's heart had changed. She awoke, humbled, and apologized for her greed. I was blinded by my desires, Numo. I didn't see the happiness we already had. From that day on, they lived peacefully, grateful for their modest life and the lessons learned from the magical stones. Though they no longer had riches or power, they had each other, and that was more than enough.